Hello, I'm Richard Murphy, and I want to discuss what is a sensitive issue in Scotland, which is, will Scotland need its own currency after independence? Now, everybody who followed the independence referendum debates in 2014 will know that this issue came up time and again. And in the end, Alex Salmond, who was then leading the SNP, decided to say that Scotland would use the pound after independence. I'll tell you, he got that wrong. I'll also tell you, because I have met Alex Salmond, that he thinks he got that wrong. And he did. Why did he get it wrong? Quite simply because unless Scotland had its own currency after independence, it would not be an independent country. If that's the goal, independence is the goal, and being an independent country is the goal, Scotland has to have its own currency. Let me explain. Unless Scotland broke free from the pound, it would have no control over its economic policy after independence. And that's for a very simple reason. Whoever controls the central bank of a country controls its interest rate policy. Whoever controls its interest rate policy also controls its ability to borrow. And whoever controls its central bank also controls its ability, which is now very important, to use quantitative easing to mitigate any form of borrowing and create money to fund spending without relying upon taxpayers. All of those issues are absolutely, critically and essentially, necessarily under the control of the government of an independent country if it wants to manage its own economy. But if, as those who propose that Scotland use the pound suggest, that policy is left to be determined by London, then Edinburgh, which would then be the capital of Scotland, would have no control over the economy of the country which it was supposed to be governing. It is as simple and straightforward as that. The Scottish government could not decide how much it wanted to spend. It could not decide if it wanted to borrow. It could not decide if it wanted to use quantitative easing, and it could not set interest rates for the best interests of the people of Scotland and its economy as a whole. So why be independent if you can't control the most fundamental and basic issues within the economy? I don't know. So Scotland has to have its own currency. I guess the follow-on question which people ask is then, well, could it have its own currency? And of course the answer is yes. Very large numbers of places have left the governance of the UK and successfully created their own currencies. Let's just look at the former Commonwealth states. How many of them use the pound? Well, effectively, almost none. That's the simple, straightforward fact. There are some British Crown dependencies and overseas territories that are linked to it, but that's about it, and they really don't count. Otherwise, every country that's left the control of the UK has created its own currency, completely successfully. So is there any reason to think that Scotland couldn't do that? No, none whatsoever. And there are other precedents around Europe. For example, when Czechoslovakia split into two states, they each adopted their own currency. Was that a problem? No. How long did it take? About a month. So this is not an issue for which there is no precedent and no experience. It can be done. I'm not saying there wouldn't be issues to negotiate. I'm not saying that there wouldn't be issues to manage. Of course there would be. And there would have to be agreement, ideally, between the remaining UK and Scotland about how that process would be delivered. But is it desirable and is it essential to the achievement of a successful independent Scotland? The answer is unambiguous. Yes, it's essential. And anybody who says otherwise clearly hasn't got the interests of Scottish independence at heart. Speaking as somebody who's not Scottish, somebody who doesn't live in Scotland, somebody who's looking at this as an outside observer, I simply cannot understand how there are people who think they want Scottish independence who don't get the point that Scotland must have its own currency. It makes no sense at all to put that platform forward as if it is a serious basis for progress in the independence debate. It isn't. And it's time they backed off and realised there's only one route in which Scotland can be independent, and that's by having a Scottish pound. I'm Richard Murphy. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to this video series on YouTube if you're interested. Also look for us on Facebook. I am on Twitter @Richard J. Murphy, and at the same time look at my blog Tax Research UK, where you can find much more on these themes. And I'll see you again soon.